1 week before she was taken, Michaela woke up in the middle of the night. She sat down at the kitchen table, and she wrote a poem, not about school, not about friends, not about anything a 9-year-old typically thinks about. She wrote a poem about people being abducted and kept in attics. Her mother found it strange at the time. After what happened next, she never stopped thinking about it. Michaela Garecht was born on January 24, 1979 in Oakland, California. She was the child her parents had spent 5 years hoping for. Eventually the family grew. More children came, and they moved to a quieter place, Hayward, California, a peaceful suburb where kids could play outside and parents didn't have to worry. Or at least that's what it felt like. Michaela was 9 years old, happy, normal. The kind of kid who played with her siblings, stayed close to home, and spent most of her time with her best friend Katrina, who lived just across the street. These two were inseparable. And on November 19, 1988, they made a simple decision that changed everything. If you want to follow this case and others like it, subscribe to Unresolved Years Mysteries right now. Turn on notifications. We cover the cases that deserve more than a headline. Now let's get into what happened. It was the start of Thanksgiving break. Michaela and Katrina were running back and forth between their houses that morning, trying on different outfits for an upcoming school performance. It was a good day. Excited energy. Nowhere to be. Around 10 in the morning, Katrina's dad gave her $5 to buy some candy. The girls ran to Michaela's house to ask her mother if they could go to the nearby store. It was less than a mile away. They'd been there plenty of times, just never alone. Michaela's mother hesitated. Both girls were only 9. This would be their first time at that store without an adult. But eventually, after some back and forth, she said yes. With one condition: buy the candy and come straight home. She watched them ride off on their scooters. 2 little girls. 1 short trip. She had no idea that would be the last time she saw her daughter. The girls reached the store, locked their scooters outside, and went in. When they came back out, they got caught up talking and started walking home before they remembered they had left the scooters behind. They turned around and went back, and that's when Michaela noticed something. Her scooter was gone, not stolen, just moved. It was sitting beside a car parked a few yards away from the store entrance. She walked toward it, and that's when Katrina heard a scream. She ran back, and she saw a man grabbing Michaela, forcing her into the car next to the scooter. The man jumped into the driver's seat. The car sped away. Just like that, Katrina stood there alone in the parking lot. Imagine being 9 years old and watching that happen to your best friend. What would you even do? Katrina ran into the store and told the cashier. The cashier called the police. Officers arrived within minutes. Michaela's father was also called immediately. He rushed to the scene with Katrina's father, and he told his wife to stay home by the phone. She would wait by that phone for years. Detectives faced problems from the very first hour. No surveillance cameras near the store. No clear license plate. No physical evidence except for one thing: the scooter. The cashier provided the first description. She had noticed a suspicious man loitering near the store before the abduction. White, around 30 years old. Noticeable mustache. Old maroon sedan. He had parked, got out, never entered the store, just walked along the building, peering through windows. She thought he might be planning to rob her. Based on her description, police created a composite sketch and pushed it out immediately to the media and to patrol officers across the county. But here's where the investigation hit its first major problem. When detectives went back to interview Katrina, the actual eyewitness, her description was completely different. Not slightly different, completely different. According to Katrina, the man was around 20 years old. Long, unkempt, light-colored hair down to his shoulders, pimples on his face, blue eyes. She said they reminded her of a fox. And the car wasn't maroon. It was beige, boxy, covered in dents. The cashier had been watching a different man entirely. So for the first 48 hours, the most critical window in any abduction case, every officer in the county was looking for the wrong person. A person who had nothing to do with Michaela's disappearance. Does that frustrate you? Because it should. A new composite sketch was created immediately, but the damage to that golden window had already been done. Before we go further, if this case matters to you, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps this channel reach more people who care about cases like Michaela's. Subscribe if you haven't already. Every subscriber means more coverage, more cases, more families who get their stories told. Now let's keep going. While the search was underway, detectives looked more carefully at the scooter, and what they found confirmed something deeply disturbing. The kidnapper hadn't stumbled across Michaela by accident. He had moved her scooter deliberately, placed it next to the back door of his car before she came out of the store, so that when she came looking for it, she would walk directly to him. He had planned this. He had watched these 2 little girls arrive at the store, identified his target, and set a trap. That level of premeditation for the abduction of a 9-year-old is hard to sit with. Forensic examiners processed the scooter and found a fingerprint, partial, belonging to someone who was not Michaela or anyone in Katrina's family. But here's the problem. The technology in 1988 couldn't do much with a partial print. There was no database to run it against. The only option was direct comparison with specific suspects, one at a time. That fingerprint would sit in evidence for over 30 years. We'll come back to it. The FBI joined the case within days. Child disappearances had been rising not just in Hayward, but in surrounding cities. Investigators suspected connections. They threw significant resources at the search. 4,000 tips came in within the first month alone. 42,000 flyers were distributed in the initial days. Michaela's photograph appeared on milk cartons across the state. Celebrities made public appeals. A $70,000 reward was offered. And yet, nothing. Weeks passed, then months. Hikers in a nearby national park found footprints. One adult, one child, leading to a blanket and empty food wrappers deep in the forest. Police searched the park with helicopters and thermal imaging. Nothing. Mountains. Remote locations. Dead ends. Dead ends. Dead ends. Michaela's mother didn't stop. She studied similar cases. She built her own investigation at home. She refused to stop looking. And she spent every single day carrying the weight of having said yes that morning. That detail, a mother who gave her daughter permission to ride her scooter to the store, is something that never leaves a family. Cases like this don't just disappear. The questions live in the house long after the investigation moves on. In 1991, 3 years after the abduction, investigators turned their attention to a 43-year-old man named Timothy Binder. The more they looked at him, the more uncomfortable the picture became. Before Michaela disappeared, Binder had already been on the police radar. He had been sending gifts, letters, and money to young girls, complete strangers. Some of the letters contained highlighted Bible passages with phrases like, "I have chosen you and be with me." Parents reported him. He was questioned. He claimed he was just trying to befriend lonely children. That explanation did not hold up to scrutiny. In 1985, Binder had been fired from a job in Child Protective Services in Colorado for collecting personal information about young girls and then sending them gifts. He had a prior arrest for attempting to lure 2 girls into his van. When police searched his vehicle, they found photographs of children throughout the interior, alongside the same Bible passages. And he regularly visited the graves of young girls in local cemeteries. But it gets stranger. 6 months before Michaela disappeared, a 7-year-old girl named Amber vanished from the same area. After her disappearance, Binder reached out to Amber's mother. He offered help. He visited regularly. And then he wrote a letter to the police. In that letter, he said the next missing girl would be 9 years old. Several months later, Michaela, age 9, was taken. After Michaela disappeared, Binder began calling her mother, visiting the house, offering to help, and in December 1988, he sent a Christmas card to an FBI profiler he had previously spoken with. The card showed an illustration of a girl holding up 4 fingers. Shortly after, a 4-year-old girl went missing in the same town. Let me ask you something. What would you think if you were one of those detectives? Police obtained a search warrant for Binder's home. They found nothing that directly linked him to any abduction. When his behavior became public, Binder faced harassment and attacks. He eventually sued the city. He won. Detectives ultimately concluded there was no concrete evidence tying him to the crimes. Some believed his behavior, while deeply disturbing, had a different explanation. The investigation moved on. In December 1992, 4 years after Michaela disappeared, a man serving time in Indiana for robbery contacted police. He claimed to know where Michaela was buried. Investigators were skeptical, but when he wrote a letter to a prominent San Francisco newspaper, public pressure forced them to act. He was transferred to California. He led investigators to a park. He described a gladiolus field. Officers searched for 8 hours, and then the man admitted he had made the whole thing up. He said he just wanted to bring some comfort to Michaela's family, to give them closure. Instead, he had wasted the investigation's resources, reopened the family's wounds, and given them a false grave to stand over. He was sentenced to an additional 6.5 years in prison and ordered to pay the family $6,000. Justice for that, but not for Michaela. Not yet. In August 2000, police arrested a man named Curtis Anderson in connection with the murder of a 7-year-old girl in Vallejo the previous year. He confessed and went to prison, but detectives suspected he had done more. For 7 years, there was no concrete evidence. Then Curtis contacted the FBI himself. He was in poor health. He wanted to confess before he died. He claimed to have killed 13 more girls and women, including Amber, the 7-year-old who had disappeared from Hayward 6 months before Michaela. He provided details specific enough to take seriously, but when it came to Michaela, he denied any involvement. His car matched Katrina's description. The timeline fit, but there was no physical evidence, and no bodies were recovered. The FBI planned to keep questioning him. Curtis Anderson died in 2012. Another door closed. Another lead emerged from prison. An inmate told police that his associate, Lauren Herzog, looked remarkably similar to the composite sketch from Michaela's case. Herzog and his partner had been convicted of a series of murders. Investigators suspected them of killing up to 19 people, though only some were proven. Before the inmate approached police, Herzog had died by suicide in prison. Investigators still pursued the lead. They excavated a well where Herzog and his partner had disposed of victims. They found thousands of bone fragments. Medical examiners identified remains belonging to 5 different girls. None of them were Michaela. In 2018, 30 years after Michaela disappeared, something changed. A man named David Mitch was charged with the murders of 2 women near Hayward in 1986. The breakthrough came through modern DNA analysis. Biological material had been found under the victims' fingernails in 1986, but couldn't be analyzed at the time. 3 decades later, technology finally caught up. The DNA matched David Mitch, who was already in prison for killing his 39-year-old girlfriend in 1989. Detectives looked at his record. He matched Katrina's description of the abductor. His car matched. He had been in the same area at the time of the abduction. And critically, his fingerprints were already in the system. Remember that partial fingerprint from Michaela's scooter? The one that had been sitting in evidence since 1988? The one that 1988 technology couldn't match? Forensic examiners ran it again, using modern analysis. It was a perfect match. David Mitch's fingerprint was on the scooter he had deliberately moved to set a trap for a 9-year-old girl. In 2020, he was charged with Michaela's murder. This case spans more than 30 years and it still isn't over. If you want this channel to keep covering cases like Michaela's, cases that take decades to reach even partial answers, subscribe right now. Turn on notifications. Leave a comment with your thoughts. I read every single one. Let's finish this together. David Mitch denied everything. The case went to trial. Preliminary hearings in early 2023 established that there was sufficient evidence to proceed. The defense challenged the fingerprint, arguing it didn't necessarily prove their client committed murder. Given that the abductor had deliberately placed the scooter next to his car door as a lure, that argument is difficult to accept at face value. No body has ever been recovered. The defense used that too. But in modern law, the absence of a body does not prevent a murder conviction. Prosecutors have secured convictions in dozens of cases without remains. The evidence here, the fingerprint, the DNA in the 1986 cases, the timeline, the description, formed a pattern that was difficult to dismiss. David Mitch had a history that told its own story. At 16, he broke into a house and assaulted a woman at knife point. Released early. Assaulted another woman shortly after. Released again. Arrested for robbery in May 1988, 7 months before Michaela disappeared. Sentenced to a year. Released 1 month before she was taken. 1 month. The system released him 1 month before he walked into a parking lot and set a trap with a scooter. Michaela's father traveled from out of state to attend the press conference, announcing the arrest. Michaela's mother could not be there. She had spent every year since 1988 looking for her daughter, studying similar cases, investigating from home, holding on to the hope that Michaela was alive somewhere. Waiting. When the news of the arrest broke, she was battling cancer. She thanked investigators for finding the truth before she died. And then she was gone. She never got to see the trial. She never got to sit in that courtroom. She never got to hear a verdict. But she knew. Before the end, she knew. That is the piece of this story that stays with me. A mother who spent more than 3 decades carrying the weight of a Tuesday morning in 1988. Who never stopped looking. Who blamed herself every day for saying yes. She deserved more than what this case gave her. Michaela deserved to come home. The original prosecution sought the death penalty. When the district attorney's office changed leadership, that decision was reversed. If convicted on all 3 cases, Michaela's murder and the 2 1986 murders, David Mitch will face several decades in prison rather than life. That decision caused significant anger among the victims' families. David Mitch is currently 62 years old. The families, the investigators, and the people who have followed this case for 35 years are left with a legal outcome that feels incomplete, even if a guilty verdict eventually arrives. Police continue to search for Michaela's remains. A $10,000 reward remains available for any information about where she is. She has never been found. Michaela Garecht was 9 years old. She rode her scooter to a store to buy candy on a Thanksgiving break morning. Someone had already been watching her. He moved her scooter. He waited. And 35 years later, the fingerprint he left behind on that scooter is the reason a trial is finally happening. The forensic science that didn't exist in 1988 exists now. And it found him. But Michaela has still never been found. Her family spent their lives waiting for answers that came too late, in pieces, with too much still missing. What do you think? Do you believe there's more to this case that hasn't come out yet, and is a reduced sentence, for someone who set a trap for a 9-year-old girl, enough? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts on this one. If you have any information about the whereabouts of Michaela Garecht's remains, contact the Hayward Police Department. A $10,000 reward is available. Thank you for watching Unresolved Years Mysteries. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one.